All right, guys. So, got a question I want to pose to you and something I want to flesh out a little bit because I've been pondering this for some time. And that is, do you think there's any way that the Islamism issue has been overblown and exaggerated to try to draw us into more foreign conflict in the Middle East, to try to distract us from other things that I think the people who are peddling this would not want us to focus on? And do you believe that this conflict, this belief that radical Islamism is the greatest threat to our existence, is going to benefit a certain nation, a certain government? That's kind of the question and some of the analysis I want to talk about. But let me just say that I 100% believe that radical Islamism is a threat. There's no doubt about it. It is a threat. To what extent is more of my question, because we've seen terror attacks. I will say 9/11, there's a lot of smoke there, a lot of questions I have about the legitimacy of that and the authenticity of what actually happened. But I can say confidently that ISIS, they developed a caliphate, which basically means a territory they claimed as theirs, which was, I believe, was the size of Iraq back in 2016. It was pretty incredible that they were able to establish that. And ISIS was and is very fundamental in their beliefs. They take the Quran quite literal, and they believe, a holy war is necessary for them to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. And so, no, I 100% believe. I mean, they waged carnage. They killed hundreds and thousands of people all across the world. So, no, that was real. And radical Islamism is a threat, certainly, to Western civilization. But my question is, and this is what I want to flesh out, the people who came into our country, to America, and the people that are flooding Europe, I totally am opposed to mass migration, illegal immigration, obviously. And many of those people are of the Islamic background. Now, those people are being invited in. The Biden administration opened up our borders and invited these people and invited terrorists in. Now, my question is, why would you knowingly, because they were not ignorant, guys, this was abundantly clear, they allowed terrorists to enter into our country. Now, if obviously terrorists are a threat, I mean, any type of terrorist is a threat. So why would you knowingly allow them into our nation? Could it be that you were wanting them to engage in terror because that would invite us to have to respond? And we saw this not in a completely analogous way, but this is how Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, brought us into World War II. He knew the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor. He knew it. There's intel that is clear. I mean, to think about the abomination that was, honestly, that he allowed thousands of casualties. He brought us into World War II by basically cutting off the oil, I do believe, from Japan, or at least limiting their oil supply, knowing they would have to attack Pearl Harbor. So we've seen this in our nation's history, nefarious activities like this. So, and there's a bloodlust. There's a bloodlust for war that people have. So the Biden administration openly allowed terror individuals into this nation. And you have to think too, this is just a question. I don't know the answer. I really don't. But I've heard people talk about the obsession is specifically with the Israel first crowd. Okay. And again, I'm telling you what I've heard. And I think there's some legitimacy in at least talking about this. Do you think there's an incentive for the Israel first crowd, the government of Israel, specifically Benjamin Netanyahu's administration? Do you think there's an incentive for them to prop up this narrative and to tell you that Qatar, for example, because I'm hearing all this stuff about Qatar is the next, Iran. They're the next, like Afghanistan with the Taliban, I think, right? Taliban, yeah. It's late. But they're an existential threat right now. They're kind of piggybacking off Iran and being a state sponsor of terror. You're seeing and hearing a lot of this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what to believe. I mean, on one end, I'm like, I can see why this would benefit the Israeli regime, their government, because if you're telling people that these individuals are an existential threat to America, then their enemies become our enemies. And then obviously their war becomes our war. And I can tell you one thing for sure. There are millions and millions of people who want nothing to do with that. The majority of Americans want nothing to do with wars of other countries. It's totally different with engaging in a conflict or engaging in an affair across, the ocean in another nation that would directly benefit our country. That's a totally different topic of conversation. But I think there has to be at least some questions there, right? Like, it seems there's some smoke, all right? And I was looking at some stuff today. I'm like, what is the obsession with Qatar right now? Like, what is the obsession? And I think we need to ask questions, guys. And again, the people who are in this nation, who are in Europe, were let in. They were let in and let loose. And you have to begin pondering and asking, what is the reason for that? And we know for sure there's a lust for war in both parties. You see it certainly in the Democrat Party right now, and you're also seeing it in pockets within the Republican Party. And I do not believe President Trump, I believe people are trying to suck him into that. I don't believe he's going to acquiesce to that, but it's something we need to at least be questioning. But we also need to be engaging in this debate or in this conversation. Because there's something here, guys, that doesn't smell right. And I'm telling you, instinctually, the way God has wired us, and we're not always right. We see in part, we prophesy in part, but there is an instinct, there's a sensitivity, an intuition He's given us. And right now, there's something that does not smell right with what's going on right now with this. And I'm sure the conversation will continue, but hopefully this at least kind of gets the wheels greased a little bit in this conversation. So more to come. All right, see you guys.